Happy Dave Hodges here on this 4th of July weekend and on into the early week because we're going to do a lot with talking about what it means to be an American and the threats to America. And right now, we're looking at a particular nation who should be our closest ally, but not a dominant partner. And if you call out the dominant partner portion of this relationship between America and Israel, you're labeled as anti-Semitic. And because I have questioned certain things that are just absolute insanity, I'm being hit with being anti-Semitic. So we're going to come in here and we're going to talk about how I am America first, Israel second, NATO third. Those are my top three priorities. And I'm not real happy with NATO. But I'm less happy with Israel right now because they've gotten off their mission. They've gotten away from United States, please help us. We need you to survive. And we accommodated that need very well, I might add, to where we'll tell you what to do because we own you. And that's now the attitude. We're going to cover that in a separate aspect when I talk about how Israel is colonizing the United States. But we're going to start off by something I feel I have to do. And I don't feel any sense of guilt. I don't feel the need to defend myself. I'm just going to present a public presentation of my persona, my beliefs, my history. So when they hang the anti-Semitic label on me, you'll see it's a bunch of crap. And not only that, then we're going to go to the IRHA list of anti-Semitic beliefs. And most of them I wholeheartedly agree with. If you're a Holocaust denier, you're either incredibly ignorant or incredibly prejudiced. And I totally agree with that. But there are some in there that should make the hairs on the backs of the necks of every American stand on edge because they're telling you we dominate you, we own you. We're going to get into that right here on the Common Sense Show. Now, it's kind of funny how the Charlie Kirk situation and his questionable insurance policy on his position, not Charlie, has now really sparked a debate. And I'm really getting some interesting comments on that piece we ran yesterday and the presentation I did on the show Strange Planet with Richard. And that was really, I think we had a very insightful conversation. He is very knowledgeable on this. I'm supposed to go on there as so-called the expert, and he was as much of an expert as I was, if not more so. But what I'm seeing in that situation is that this whole insurance thing has come to light. And the people that put together, and it looks like it's Lori France, that would be my best guess. LFGG kid, LFGG, LF, Lori France. Uh, Too close to not be true, in my opinion. And that's not illegal, by the way. It's not illegal. But I think the way this whole thing was manipulated, either with or without the participation of Lori Francie, and I don't know that she was involved. I have no idea. So I fully admit that. But the bottom line is that insurance policy goes right into what I want to talk to you about with our sponsor, IRS code 7702 and Iron Hawk Financial. And you get a genius, and I do mean he's a genius, along with Marianne McAdore, the COO. They are absolute economic geniuses. I'm so impressed with them. And what they have done is they have cracked that code 7702 that the rich and famous have legally used, but kept it so obscure the public couldn't use it to get rich beyond their wildest dreams, which is what this insurance policy, I believe, does. And they now have this information has leaked, and people like Joe and Marianne are teaching people how to use this. It's not a loophole, it's part of the code, and how people are making lots and lots of money. In fact, there are two people who are working as senior agents at Ironhawk who found them from my ad. And now they not only signed up and did this for themselves, they've now become agents That's how much these people believe in it. Once you figure this out, you go, this is awesome. Well, we can make that available to you. We can make it available to you right now. And you're not related to anything with the Charlie Kirk insurance policy, which is really questionable. It's nothing like that, but it does take advantage of some of these laws that are perfectly legal. All you got to do is go to dhawk.com, dhawk.com, and leave your contact information. They'll be in touch and they'll tell you right away. They can help you, they can't help you. They're not trying to sell you. They're looking for people they can help. And so they don't beg for people because people want to do this because they want to make a lot of money and minimize their tax bill in the process. Okay, I'm going to give you some aspects here to establish where I'm coming from with this. Number one, this show, the Common Sense Show, Dave Hodges here, freeing America one enslaved mind at a time. We are about God, family, country, and helping the oppressed. That's our entire purpose. And government, if you look at history, is the inherent enemy of people. But Romans 13 says you got to obey them until they violate the laws of God. So I am, I think, a good Christian, and I believe in Romans 13. But I also believe in calling out injustice, which is also biblical. And you go to Matthew, the book of Timothy, and there's all kinds of examples where you should be calling out government that's not doing their job and they're deceiving and lying to the people. Okay, so that's my position on this. Now, I have called out the fact that I believe Israel is colonizing the United States in many different areas that are of great concern to me, especially my faith, and I'll cover that secondarily in an upcoming segment. So I want to give you my background here very quickly, my paternal background. And then I'm going to show you the anti-Semitic clauses of the IRHA. It's a short presentation, so let's get to it. On my mom's side of the family, very briefly, we had an ancestor named John who came to this country in 1745. He was put into the British Army against his will. He fought in the French and Indian War, and then to heck with this, and he fought for Washington. So that was a fact. So anyway, we are my mom's side of the family, daughters of the American Revolution. Pretty cool. I'm really proud of that fact that our history goes back that far. On my dad's side of the family, it's immigrant city from Germany, pretty exclusive. And my dad had typical Jewish features, by the way, including the nose. And so did my grandmother, and so did my great grandmother, and her sister, my great aunt. I knew all of them. And so, anyway, that family name was Freiberg. Yeah, use your best imagination, okay? Freiberg. But this guy is anti-Semitic. This is what I laugh about. Was I raised Jewish? No, I wasn't. I was raised Christian, basically non-denominational Christian church. We flirted a little bit with the Lutheran church, but basically non-denominational, which we are today. Okay, I'm going to say this very publicly. I rooted for Israel in every war they fought, even in the beginning of the war, the 12-day war with Gaza, until the abuse became unbearable for me to hear about. I couldn't take it anymore. We're bombing elementary schools during the day when children are there. No, 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 no. That's a war crime. But they kept repeating the war crime. Accidents happen in war. I could accept that. That happens. There's collateral damage, and it's horrible, but it is a fact of war. And I wouldn't label an administration as being war criminals for a single or even maybe two or three acts that were accidental. This was intentional. And then shooting down people in food lines. Yeah, those reports are coming out from Palestinians, and I don't believe they're making this up. I don't believe they're making it up. So I rooted for Israel in every single war. I also thought it was really great. We share the Old Testament with the Jewish faith, and that Jews and Christians would protect each other. And we do have a common history. And there's a brotherhood there. Then we would protect each other. And I talked about that openly many times. I always said, too, I hope that Jewish people will come to understand and accept Jesus. but I certainly wasn't obnoxious or overbearing about it. That has to be an individual choice. I believed Israel was an incredibly valuable ally because when Russia could have threatened the Middle East oil supplies during the Cold War, Israel was the rapid deployment force. The U.S. didn't have the technology yet to deploy in a meaningful fashion. So Israel was it, and we should be arming Israel. And I said that. I said, they're an incredible ally. They're easily our most important ally. And I said that for decades, decades. I've always admired the Jewish culture because certain groups have certain cultures. And if you look at the Jewish culture, it's born out of necessity. They faced extermination. Hey, Six-Day War? Come on. They faced extermination right from the very beginning. And I didn't think the U.S. did enough to help them. I thought Truman had his hand on the chicken switch, and he should have stepped up and helped Israel right away. And I'm highly critical. Truman wasn't a good president. Let's just be flat honest about this. He has one great accomplishment, which was he ended World War II, and you can debate the use of nuclear weapons, but he still pulled us through the war and gave us final victory. And that wasn't always guaranteed, but he was not a good president. And his dealings with Israel early on were not good. And I understand why Israel felt that they had to have influence over other government officials who were more friendly to them because their survival was at stake. The people in the Middle East, a lot of them wanted every Jewish person dead. How do I know? Because they said so. They wrote it. They put out pamphlets. They made shows about it. The podcasts of the day, the kind of podcasts you would have had, talked about this. So the Jewish people had to really get an incredible work ethic. Incredible. And the Jews have been historically persecuted. You know, they're in Egypt, right? They got to get to Israel. It's been one persecution after another. Yeah, the things I've been saying about Netanyahu, some of you are probably surprised I'm saying this, but I said this for years. Um, Now, in the Jewish culture, we got to be better than other people because we got to survive. So their kids are incredibly disciplined as a culture. They understand what work ethic is, success. All Jews are rich. So you get the stereotypes that arise out of that. And I'm saying, well, even if that's true, it's a symbol of doing something right with your kids. So that was, the idea that the Jews own the media and control politics and the blah, blah, blah. Well, there is an element of truth in some of that, but it's how you use that power that makes it right or wrong. Success isn't bad unless you're named Mondami and you're a socialist. Success is good. And I admire success. And we criticize it. And it's not just Jewish people we do that to. We do it with Asians. Look at the discriminatory practices of college admissions because the Asian kids were killing it, especially on the West Coast, on SAT scores. Off the chart successful. And yet one discrimination of another because they had Asian last names. And a lot of those people were the South Vietnamese refugees at the end of the war. My niece and her co-valedictorian in high school, Vietnamese refugees, had a joint party together after the fact. Great to hear the history. So we have a history. A lot of people are jealous of other people's success. And Jewish people have been the victim of that. I fully acknowledge that's true, but so have the Asians. And then you had the Chinese with the great work ethic. So they're put to work on the railroad. How are they treated? Okay, well, so you know the history here. We don't like successful people as a group, and that's why socialism exists. And by the way, here's a disturbing fact. A recent poll just said 1 out of 3 Americans would vote for a socialist candidate. Well, let me remind you people to digress for a moment. That 1 in 3, okay, that's scary. You're incredibly stupid and incredibly ignorant. Oh, you have the right, but you're incredibly stupid or incredibly ignorant if you embrace socialism. And why do I say that? Because socialism ends with more poverty and body bags. And it's never been successful anywhere it's been done. Show me an example, please. Show me. Back to Jewish people. We are somewhat united in the second coming, but for the benefit of the believers of Judaism, I hope that they find Jesus before that second coming. And there's supposed to be signs and wonders that'll try to bring people to the faith, and everyone will have heard the word and so forth and so on. And that's what the Bible tells us. But I do hope that they secure a place in heaven. That's my belief. Um, Now, how do they define anti-Semitism with official organization? Most of it I agree with, and this is when the lies start. The lies always start with a truthful statement or statements, and then they end up wanting to control people with a lie, and this is what happens here. This is from the IRHA list of classic anti-Semitism examples widely accepted. And you see this in groups like the ADL and so forth, okay? And you hear Congress people talking about this, calling for aiding and justifying the killing and harming of Jews. Agreed, 100%. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews, such as controlling the media, economy, or governments. Well, if you look at the success rate on a per capita basis, Jewish people are number one, and that's to be honored. What do they do that's right? We should be looking at that. What's in that culture that makes them so successful? And the Jewish army, the IDF, is tougher man for man than just about any place in the world. Why do I say that? Because look what they've had to survive, and look at they're a country of only 9 million people. They're about as big as New York City. And yet they're able to, over the years, have fought off far superior numbers and weapons. And if you look to our media has a disproportionate, that means percentage per population, a disproportionate number of Jewish people that control the media in various steps. I have no problem with that. It's how you use that power that is concerning to me. So, like if you're over on TikTok and you say, I don't like what Netanyahu's doing about XYZ, boom, you're off TikTok. That's an abuse of power. And this is how stereotypes start. And then let's continue. Accusing Jews as a people being responsible for real imagined wrongdoing by a single Jewish person or group. We're individuals. Now, some people align with groups, they do bad things, they should be identified. I come from a country in origin in Germany where they did really bad things. So you have to own your history, but that doesn't mean you stereotype. So the actions of a few don't condemn the character of the many. So in principle, I agree with this. Denying the fact or scope mechanisms such as gas chambers or intentionality of the Holocaust. Anyone, and I hear this argument, a long time ago, I was a young teacher. I had a dear, dear friend named Lorraine, and she was kind of my mentor at the time. And she got called into the principal's office because she had taught the Holocaust in her history class. And she's telling me, I'm getting called in. I said, well, what are you getting called in for? It's real. Well, no, no, no. I said, Lorraine, I got family history. I know about what led up to the Holocaust in detail. I've heard about it. I grew up hearing about it. And I said, this is ridiculous. So I said, do you want me to go in there with you? She said, no, no, no. And the principal is really good. He just gave the person airtime and dismissed him. But the reality is here you had a teacher called into question for daring to teach the Holocaust was real. That person was insane. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel than their nations. Amen. God bless that statement in the affirmative of being true, because it is true in Congress. Oh, it's not just Jewish members of Congress. It's people who take AIPAC donations and they think it's a good idea to merge our militaries together. This is what's absolutely insane. So this is the one thing right here. See, this is trying, all these other things we said that are anti-Semitic are indeed anti-Semitic, and that's true. And we should condemn them. But this particular fact is not true. And we see signs of abuse with regard to this, and we should be calling this out. We should not be taking foreign donations from any country for any politician in a campaign whatsoever. I don't care if it's from Ethiopia. I don't care if it's from Sudan, if they had anything to give us. You don't take foreign donations. You're an American representative or you are not. There is no gray area. You can do foreign aid. You can have foreign alliances. You can make gifts. But you cannot take money because that's bribes from a foreign nation and it should not be legal. And we have people in Congress who are really much more loyal to Israel than they are to America. And then you look at TPUSA and their donors, because Charlie wouldn't just unabashedly become a propagandist for Netanyahu. They started pulling their money out. Then they take him to the Hamptons and browbeat him and scare the living hell out of him to the point where he told people, I feel they might kill me. Then later he even said, I fear the government might. People, this is not a secret. There are so many people in TPUSA who have told these stories, and it's wrong. It's wrong. It's 100% wrong. Okay. Now, denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination. Israel is a self-determining nation that has a right to survive. We do not have the obligation to follow their directions. Applying double standards to Israel, requiring it of a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic nation. They're the ones in Israel, their leadership, that's guilty of doing that to us. Using symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism. Yeah, I think the swastika is offensive. I agree with that. Um, Drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis. Okay, forget the term Nazis. Do I see Netanyahu being authoritarian? Yes, I do. Sometimes authoritarianism grows out of need for unity because everyone's life is at stake. We had near martial law during World War II. They controlled what you could buy, what you could say, where you could go. And that was because our nation was at risk. That is an overstatement to basically prevent criticism of an Israeli leader that's autocratic. That's an excuse to make someone immune from legitimate political criticism. I don't think Israel or the Nazis, but personally, that's not the argument here. The argument is here is, do they violate basic human rights? And in Gaza, they certainly did. Holding Jews responsible for the actions of the state of Israel. Well, the one thing I do know is that a good portion of the population in Israel are not fans of this present administration that rules Israel, and they'd like to see a change. But there's an ironclad hold over the people. So I don't even know where this organization is getting this. This is a ridiculous and really a benign, stupid statement. So anyway, these things have been adopted by the US, the UK. And where they're going with this is they want to make Israel immune from criticism of having their way with us. And we're going to talk about how that's happening in the next segment. And they're fair game for criticism because they are a country, not America. They have political organizations, not American political organizations. And you know what's interesting is I can criticize more of my government without retaliation than I can of Israel's government. What sense does that make? Seriously, can you imagine Stalin allowing a Russian? Yeah, you can criticize me, but you just can't criticize Poland. How stupid is that? And I want to leave you with one thought. Okay. We go down through my views about how I was largely pro-Israel. And we'll bring up the case of the Liberty, because if I don't bring it up, some of you will. When the Liberty happened, I thought it was a case of mistaken identity. I really wanted to believe that. But as I became more familiar with what happened on the Liberty, and how the Liberty clearly from the air could have been recognized as an American ship, I've now changed my mind. And I began to look at the nation of Israel and what kind of message were you sending? And that was probably the most reckless thing they ever did to America, unless you believe they're responsible for Charlie Kirk. That's equally as bad, if not worse. So that's my position on the Liberty. It was wrong. It was deliberate. They were sending a message, and there should have been consequences. But unfortunately, at that time, we had a despicable individual, a despicable person in Lyndon Johnson, absolutely despicable. And just to give you an example how he fit into this, when JFK was assassinated on the day of, he said, Israel has lost a friend in JFK, but they have gained a greater friend in me. And this is the problem. We need Americans who are America first and treat our most precious allies, which Israel is, with respect, but not allow us to be dominated. I mean, I'm almost to the point where say, stop paying taxes to America, to the IRS, just pay it to Netanyahu, because you'll see in the next segment, that's where it looks like this is going. I'm Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show. And on this 4th of July period of time in which we're celebrating a wonderful holiday, in which we are a wonderful nation, if we want to keep our country, we better keep our independence. And that's from every other nation. See, I could say 199 nations, but there are people saying, that's anti-Semitic, because I won't allow the domination without question. We'll see you back here next time. God bless and happy birthday, America.